Cyberpunk 2077 has just gone golden and it is just around the corner, and millions of gamers, myself included, are excited to jump into CD Projekt Red's next big RPG. But given that the universe of Cyberpunk is so richly detailed and has enough lore to span several books, it can be daunting to know where to begin or what information is important to know before jumping into the game. This video series is designed to cover all the key areas that you need to know to get you ready to jump into the world of Cyberpunk 2077. In today's video, I'm going to cover the complete history of Cyberpunk from 1990 to 2077, including the key events and main players that have helped to shape the world of Cyberpunk. So strap yourself in because there's a lot to go through. The history of Cyberpunk 2077's world largely mirrors our own until 1990, at which point it splits into an alternative timeline, leading to the dystopian world that we see in 2077. One of the first major differences to our own history was the collapse of the United States, the roots of which began in the 1990s. During this time, the US government stepped up its war against the drug cartels and the corrupt governments in Central America. The desire to win the war on drugs led to the use of chemical weapons. This had devastating repercussions as America faced political backlash from its allies and attacks on its home soil from the powerful cartels, resulting in the detonation of a nuclear device in New York City in 1993. In 1994, the global market collapsed and another nuclear incident took place in Pittsburgh. The United States was left in complete disarray, made worse in 1996 when the president and vice president were assassinated. As the government floundered on deciding who should govern, a political coup took place. The NSA, CIA, FBI and DEA joined forces, forming the Gang of Four. They seized control and declared martial law. Unsurprisingly, this move was not received well. In retaliation, gangs appeared across the United States and government officials struggled to retain control. This was further exacerbated by a series of natural and unnatural disasters which killed millions. Acid rain and dust storms caused by extreme deforestation were a huge problem in America. Thermonuclear war in the Middle East turned that part of the world into a radioactive wasteland, causing a global oil crisis, while worldwide financial meltdown shook the economies of almost every country in the world. Many states, including Northern California, seceded, declaring themselves free states, and this time also marked the emergence of the nomads, a new American social class of migrants in search of water, jobs, and safety, leaving many cities and towns deserted. The weakening of national government and public unrest only strengthened the position of the mega corporations, giving them increased freedom, power, and autonomy. As affiliations between politicians and corporations became more common and were no longer regarded as a conflict of interest, but instead seen as advantageous. This increase in power and position can be seen in the first three corporate wars between 2004 and 2017. I won't go into too much detail on each here, as I don't think it's needed for the purposes of this video, but I will include a link in the description for anyone who would like to read more. All you really need to know is that these wars were mainly fought between corporations over resources, infrastructure, control, and of course, money. They were important, however, for the legacy that they left. They set a very clear example to other corporations that using military style and cyber warfare were viable business tactics. It also proved that corporations were beyond the reach of national and international law, and it paved the way for what would become one of the bloodiest conflicts to come, the Fourth Corporate War. The Fourth Corporate War began as a race between two rival aquatech companies. As such, it is sometimes called the Ocean War. The two rivals were CINO, Corporation Internationale Nauticale et Oceanique, I think I butchered that, and OTEC, Ocean Technology and Energy Corp, who were vying for control over the remains of a third corporation. I am not even going to try to pronounce this name, so for these purposes, we're just going to call them IHA. They were a mega corporation that specialized in underwater shipping and technology, who had gone bankrupt. Initially, both corporations engaged in typical corporate battle strategies, stock manipulations, and economic warfare. But as the conflict grew out of hand and a stalemate set in, with neither side able to get the upper hand, it wasn't long before the rivalry between Sino and OTEC became embittered and hostilities escalated. This led to both corporations hiring the forces of much larger mega corporations to provide them with trained militaries, offering tens of thousands of troops and the resources needed to wage war. OTEC hired Militech, an armaments manufacturer and security force based in the United States. In response, Sino hired the Japanese-based Arasaka Corporation, one of the most influential organizations of the time, which focused on security, banking, and manufacturing. As two of the largest paramilitary megacorps in the world, Arasaka and Militech had been rivals for many years, often competing over lucrative contracts. While their initial dealings were mostly peaceful and civil, attending meetings and debates, behind the scenes, they continually tried to sabotage each other. It seemed inevitable that all-out conflict would soon manifest, and the conflict between Sino and OTEC was the perfect opportunity for them to escalate their years-old rivalry. The war began with discreet attacks between the two factions. Mid-level corporate officials were assassinated, and some dirty information was stolen and revealed. Mercenary netrunners were hired by both sides and made dozens of attacks on data caches and stock holdings, bringing chaos to the global economy. These events forced Netwatch to get involved. Netwatch was a policing organization actually founded in 2013, which worked in tandem with and received funding from governments and corporations to patrol the net looking for illegal activity. In response to the actions of these hired netrunners, they placed a temporary communication embargo on Arasaka and Militech, hoping to reduce the damage caused and bring them under control. It didn't work. By the time Eurobank had successfully mediated a truce between Sino and OTEC, the real conflict had transitioned to Militech and Arasaka. By early 2022, a new struggle between the security giants had begun. This became known as the Shadow War. This phase of the war was a lot more brutal and open. Mercenaries and edge runners were hired by both sides, carrying out covert ops and raids on known military research facilities, and netrunners unleashed a new generation of devastating viral programs on each other. Netwatch struggled to protect the net from these malicious viruses, and the net as we know it today slowly died. In June 2022, fighting between the two military corporations escalated to full-scale war, starting the third phase known as the Hot War. Thanks to their advanced transportation and logistics systems, they could strike at each other anywhere on the planet. The combination of advanced military technology and rapid deployment made it all but impossible for nations to stop conflicts within their borders, with many major cities becoming embroiled in the conflict, including Tokyo, Yokohama, Washington, Chicago, and Night City. Rio de Janeiro was the worst hit, with the city literally reduced to rubble and its people killed or made refugees. International trade routes were hit hard, and global trade was paralyzed by military action and market collapse, paving the way for piracy and the black market, which thrived. Some governments openly blamed Militech and Arasaka for the situation and withdrew their support. The Free State of California seized the LA headquarters of both companies, with Texas and some other countries soon following suit. Arasaka Towers in Night City was the last of their American headquarters to fall, wiped out by a tactical nuclear weapon detonated by a group of unidentified mercenaries. Some sources implicated that the so-called Atlantis group were involved, which included legends like Morgan Blackhand, Rogue, and Johnny Silverhand, but there wasn't enough evidence to confirm their involvement. Some believed that Militech were behind the attack, while others believed it may have been Arasaka themselves to protect their corporate secrets. Whoever was behind the attack, the detonation of the bomb marked one of the final blows in the war. Under pressure from the Japanese government, Arasaka were finally forced to concede defeat at the end of 2023, and Militech emerged victorious, albeit at great cost, with the mega corporation crippled nearly as bad as its rival. It took more than 10 years for the world to recover from global war. Riots and rebellions burned in every corner of the globe. South America was rocked by political turmoil. Europe and Asia tried to revive global trade by regulating the surviving corporations to re-establish government control. And in the United States, President Elizabeth Crest declared martial law in parts of the country still under federal control, effectively turning the United States into a police state. Ultimately, Arasaka was held responsible for the detonation of the nuke that destroyed the center of Night City, though rumors persisted that the Militech Corporation had funded the mysterious strike team and even supplied them with the nuclear device. President Crest exploited these rumors and used them to keep Militech on a short leash. For all intents and purposes, Militech effectively became a government puppet, with their assets nationalized and their military resources used to strengthen federal rule and enforce martial law. With Night City devastated after the Fourth Corporate War, President Crest saw this as a perfect way to bring the free state of Northern California to heel. Though the stubborn residents of Night City refused to concede, and in retaliation, President Crest showed no interest in helping the devastated city to recover. Over the next 34 years, cities slowly began to rebuild as trade routes were re-established and damaged infrastructures were repaired. Technology during this period also saw a resurgence. In the US, many cities that were abandoned during the collapse of 1990 to 2016 were rebuilt and repopulated with government corporate aid. In fact, many corporations during this time saw it as a great way to fix negative public opinion by helping to rebuild. What was the situation like in Night City? Well, having been abandoned by President Crest, Night City was rebuilt by its citizens with the aid of the nomads and small corporations. In Night City, there was a widespread rumor that the US government had scapegoated Arasaka, and it was the common view of residents that they would prefer to see the return of the Asian security giant than submit to federal rule. As for Arasaka, the Japanese Prime Minister made a public statement that the Arasaka Corporation was to be reduced to a Japan-only company. They were also made to pay war reparations in the hopes that they could make some amends and the Japanese government could save face. The Arasaka Corporation was able to gradually regain their position as a leader in weapon manufacturing and security industries, thanks to several profitable contracts. But their actions in the Fourth Corporate War did have long-lasting consequences, and the company's CEO, Saburo Arasaka, reportedly faced internal opposition, and a secret civil war began to brew within the company's ranks, as the corporation splintered into three warring factions: the Kiji faction, headed by Hanako Arasaka, the Halo faction, headed by Michiko Arasaka, and the Rebel faction Taka, headed by Saburo's second son, Yorinobu. At the end of 2069, US President Rosalind Myers presented a unification plan to extend federal rule over the rogue free states under the pretense of strengthening the nation. Unsurprisingly, most independent states opposed the plan, and the federal government of the new United States, backed by nationalized Militech forces, declared war on an alliance of separatist states, calling themselves the Free States. These included Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming, Montana, Arizona, Nevada, and Northern California. Washington, Oregon, and Idaho remained neutral, though at the expense of having to make several concessions to the federal government. During the conflict known as the Unification War, the Alliance of Free States was secretly supported by the Arasaka Corporation, who supplied weapons and security advisors. Despite this aid, however, they often found themselves pressed hard by the Nusa forces, who had the backing of the Unified States and Militech's military might and state-of-the-art technology. For those interested, because of this cutting-edge military technology, the Unification War is also sometimes known as the Metal Wars. During the conflict, Night City managed to avoid the fighting, though barely. They found themselves awkwardly placed between Northern and Southern California, who were on opposite sides of the war. The South allying itself with the US government, and the North determined to remain independent from federal rule. Night City held its breath as it waited for an inevitable invasion by federal troops. In early 2070, a Nusa Army division advanced on the outskirts of the city, but invasion was prevented thanks to the quick actions of Councilman Lucius Rhyme. Capitalizing on his contacts, Lucius beseeched the long-shunned Arasaka Corporation for protection. Within days of the request, an Arasaka supercarrier arrived in Coronado Bay and the Nusa Army withdrew. Following Arasaka's intervention, the Treaty of Unification was signed, officially ending the Unification War. As a result of the treaty, the Free States retained their autonomy, but in return agreed to participate in the new federal government and cease all hostilities amongst themselves. It seemed that the new United States government got the raw end of the deal, and President Myers may have only agreed to these terms mostly through fear that the Arasaka company's increased involvement may escalate the conflict, something that the Nusa government could not afford. After the war, Night City was declared an international free state, independent from the laws and governments of the Free State of Northern California and the new United States. Night City paid for its independence, though, with the further increase of megacorporation influence as they pumped money into the revitalization of the city, with a goal to establish a foothold on the west coast of the new United States. Arasaka were also able to gain a foothold in the city, building their new American headquarters on the same site as their previous building destroyed back in 2023. Now that you're up to speed on the key events, let's set the scene a little by talking about the global state of the world in 2077. Well, it's pretty terrible. Climate change is still a huge problem. Hurricanes and tornadoes of an enormous scale and destructive capacity have decimated huge populations around the world. The island of Haiti in particular was hit hard. Officially abandoned in 2062 after a series of vicious storms, hundreds of thousands of Haitians died, causing a mass exodus from the island, many having relocated to Night City. Desertification and drought have become even more dangerous, threatening the entire population of South America, as well as regions of North America, Europe, Africa, Asia, and Australia. As such, clean water has become incredibly scarce and a valuable commodity. At the same time, floods have destroyed parts of LA and Night City. The Netherlands lost 1/3 of its territory, though thanks to the newest dam building technology, they avoided becoming completely submerged into the North Sea, although the Maldives were not so fortunate, with the archipelago sunk entirely. Soil depletion has caused widespread famine, which took hundreds of thousands of lives in Asia and Africa. Some urban regions survived only thanks to new hydroponic cultivation technology developed and the vertical city farms that sprouted up. Finally, new illnesses have emerged. One of the most prevalent is cyberpsychosis, which appeared as cyber technologies began to develop and became a larger part of everyday life. Those with cyberpsychosis suffer mentally and emotionally as they isolate themselves from other people, until human interaction eventually becomes too aggravating for them, manifesting in contempt and eventually violence. This increased aggression has seen a surge in crime rates. This is a dystopian world for a reason. So, there you have it. On that positive note, that's the complete history of Cyberpunk from 1990 to 2077. There's a lot of information to take in, and I am sure your heads are spinning, but I hope you found this video useful and informative. If you did, please show your support by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I will be back again soon with my second Cyberpunk 2077 lore video, which will delve into the development of cybernetics and everything that you need to know about cyberware in Night City. So look forward to that. Anyway, hope you guys are having a great week. Take care, and as always, happy gaming. Bye guys.